Grossi Posse Packer Nation. Welcome to an episode of Packast, the podcast where you don't have to be a Packers fan, but it sure does help. I'm your host, Tom Grossi, and today, today, we have the man, the myth. Some would say the legend. I would say the mythological icon. We got number 87, the current tight end for the Green Bay Packers, the future at the position, Mr. Jace Sternberger. Jace, thank you so much for coming on. How was the intro?
Way more deserving. Thank you. I don't deserve that. Thank you.
It's humble too. All right, I'll include that in the outro, that he was also humble. I will make a note about that right now, and that will play great with the fan base. No, Jace, I really appreciate you coming on as you make the rounds around the Packers media.
Yes, to say, I feel like it's a great time, to get to know some more Packer fans and let them know a little more about me.
Absolutely, and that is what we are here to do. And so, obviously, crazy things going on in the world at the moment. And so a lot of people are turning to podcasts, Netflix, any kind of content that they can possibly digest while they are currently staying at home, like the majority of us. And obviously it is full-blown draft season. The draft is not going to be, a physical draft this year, more of a virtual draft. And so during this time, this is where every single commentator and analyst comes out of the woods and starts ranking different players. There's mock drafts everywhere, etc. And obviously you went through this process last year. So I just wanted to kind of, the first question I had for you was, I saw that you were on the Justin Dunning podcast a few years ago, and you were talking about how analysts were kind of hating on you a little bit, coming out of college, because they were comparing to you guys, like TJ Hawkinson or Noah Fant. And I kind of was curious, on your take. Obviously, there's from the creator's perspective and the media perspective, but what is your take on that? How much attention do you give to those analysts, quote unquote, ranking you?
Rankings, I didn't really pay attention to any of it, just because, my whole cliche has been, I've been the underdog, I've been, the one who's been overlooked. So it's I kind of just got it trained mentally just to not pay attention to stuff like that, because it's okay, none of that matters when we're one-on-one, or you get put in the biggest moment, it's all about if you can perform. And so I would always just make sure that I could check that box, and then I didn't pay too much attention to all that. It was simply, just added, I wouldn't say fuel to the fire, because that makes it look like I'm paying attention to it, but sometimes when it gets thrown in your face, and it's I bet, the whole Mackey thing, it that wasn't the first time. I didn't even All-State in high school. I literally got snubbed on that, snubbed in Kansas, didn't get to play. It's just kind of a, it was a reoccurring thing, and so I was used to overcoming things and proving people wrong, and so it really just kind of adds fuel to the fire.
Yeah, and I feel it creates, and you've mentioned this before, a little bit of a chip, right? And I feel it can be some motivation, because, people have said, even, comparing it to this draft, there's not a ton of, high-end tight end prospects coming out of college this year. And, you came out in a draft where there's two guys that were taken in the first round, right? There was,
Right.
Hawkinson was, picked top 10. And I feel you've come out and said that you don't compare yourself to other players, and that makes complete and total sense, because you just need to worry about you and, being the best player that you can possibly be. So whether it was the transition from college into the NFL, which obviously is a much bigger spotlight, do you kind of while there is so much noise, is it almost impossible to filter out all of it just because there's just so much of it?
No, like I said, and I'm a sports fan, so I enjoy that stuff to an extent. I know, it's one of those things. I'm not saying I know the answers to the test about it, but when I see them writing that stuff, I know it's their job. That's stuff they have to write. I'm too realistic about it. I have to be extra and the annoying one. Always add points about it. I know why they're writing the stuff, and it's I also know I how it's always been like that for years. And I every time that there's a critic, I always know an example of a player who's overturned that critic. You know what I'm saying? Beat the stereotypes. And so I enjoyed keeping up with it. If you literally, that's the thing Jimbo told me. If you were thinking about if you would stay another year, you'd easily be the first tight end taken in the class. He's like, I've never lied to you. Like, I promise you that. Like, that was said religiously in our, my parents know, but they met with, like I said, we met with Jimbo at A&M, you know, and that's literally what he talked about. You know, he's like, I promise you, you'll be the first tight end taken in this next class. And it was one of those things like that just kind of shows like I just really didn't care about the rankings. I knew what I was capable of, and like it came down to all the things that I was getting criticized for and not being ready for. I didn't feel like I needed to go through another year of college to, you know, master that. Like I felt like if I can do football 24/7, no class, no extracurricular activities. Like, let's just be honest, Green Bay, you know, we don't have that much social life going on. You know what I'm saying? Like,
no, I know exactly what you're saying.
Compared to Houston or Dallas, you know, being in Texas.
Sure.
And it just made too much sense. Yeah. I was like, I can just overachieve. I'll be with full-time coaches, grown men who have been playing this job. Like, I'll literally be at school for football. Like, why would I not do it? And it was one of the things, like, I knew, like, I wouldn't take a full year of college to achieve that.
On that thought process, like, a tiny bit. So for like you, it obviously made like a ton of sense, because you're saying, you're coming in from a perspective of, listen, one, I can go and achieve my dreams and play football 24/7 as my literal career. Who the hell wouldn't want to do that? And I get to do it earlier.
Right.
Hell yeah.
Right.
And then on the other point, you're also looking at it of like the improvements that I need to make in my game. You know, it's not going to be a dramatic shift. You know, 1 year is not going to be like, oh my God, he's the greatest tight end we've ever seen in the world. I can go and still play up to a really high level coming out as a junior.
Yeah, like basically what they're saying is holding me back, or what is my weakness, whatever, or what is that? Wasn't like, I didn't feel like it was going to take away from my, like, where I was at the moment. You know what I'm saying? Like, I could still. Like, that just meant I could tap into. I had just so much tapped in potential that I could just, you know, go into. And so it wasn't like I was losing anything by leaving. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was still going to be good, but like I had the opportunity, you know, to be great. And I was like really, that's why I made the decision to leave early.
You see, so I mean, like, so when we're talking about it, because like I've been a teacher for 5 years. So like I'm a social studies teacher. And so like it's one of those things that, you know, you're telling you, like, you're bouncing it off of your dad. You know, and I think like that's like that's great, because like not every person has like that opportunity to have someone like in their corner that they have a great relationship with, who has like gone through all the experience, right? And whether it's like helping and mentoring kids, and now they get to do it for their own kid and be like, listen, like I have an idea, you know, I'm not going to force you to take my advice, but like I can at least give you solid advice, you know, as someone who has looked out for kids their entire career. I mean, like that has to be like a great notch on the belt.
I mean, that's like his job. Like, that was the biasm of, you know, just being a father. But really, like, where I had his trust, like, I mean, on the business side of things, like, he's literally, you know, he's school superintendent. He interviews teachers every day. Like, he's constantly interviewing principals, you know, people who, you know, they need high character to have that job. And so he's evaluating people 24/7. And so I was like, I'm not like, I have to let them. He has to meet them first, like, because he reads people every day. I mean, so it was like that's why I had so much trust in him. You know, not just because he's my dad, but because, like, you know, he really does evaluate people 24/7.
Yeah, yeah. And speaking of evaluation, so you're going through this process, and you're having, you know, you're at the combine, and you're having daily conversations with Coach Out and Jo during the combine, and you know, one of the things we were talking about the media before, and how like you have people who look at tape, and like I'll admit, like I do this too. Like I look at tape and I'm like, oh, I think this player, you know, could be good here, wherever. And you know, they look at the tangibles, in which they're like, okay, this person has like this height, this weight, this arm length, you know, this speed. You know, the 40-yard dash has become it's an event all on its own. Right. And it's like a talking point of like, this is sometimes like can, you know, sink or swim with a player. So like, besides like the tangibles, you know, for you of the, like being a great receiver coming out of college, can you like kind of allude to or try to pinpoint like what the Packers were attracted to with you besides just like your tape?
You know, I think they could sense my work ethic maybe. You know, I really just, we had a lot of good conversations, you know, not just about football, but just kind of like, you know, values and, you know, not necessarily right or wrong. It was never that deep, but at the same time, it was. They wanted to know, you got to have a good person before you can have a good player, and
Sure.
so that's what they value, and that's why I think we were so successful this year with our team chemistry.
Yeah, I mean, because you've obviously been on other podcasts talking about like the culture. Everybody's read about like how great the culture has been like in that locker room, and I feel like when it comes to the quote unquote like analysts and people like looking of like where people are going to go, it's those intangible things that makes it so difficult, like, and why the vast majority of mock drafts are wrong, because teams like you're talking about, like, they're asking you about your values, about your work ethic, your attitude, and that's kind of stuff that not necessarily, you can't see that on tape. And I feel like that's like one of those things that's forgotten about, and that's also like a main driving factor, because every single team has scouts, every single team is looking into players and looking at tape, but it's like those one-on-one conversations that they can have with you that could make or break if they're going to draft you or not.
Exactly.
So I just find I find that super interesting, because like, again, I think it also kind of just like points to like the media a little bit, and it's like, listen, like, we're here for like entertainment kind of aspect, but listen, I know like my mock draft is not going to be 100% accurate. I can say that with strong conviction. And
Right.
it's just interesting to hear from someone who's obviously like gone through the process.
Yeah, it's I simply look at it as like it's just a fun, bet you just get to make with you get to make a bet with like yourself, I guess, because there's literally you got your ideas for like the first 3 picks, but after that it could be anything. Like no one knows.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, coaches don't even know it. Like they literally just don't know until the picks made. So I mean, how can you kind of believe what people are saying until then?
Yeah. I mean, even like, Baker Mayfield, picked first a few years ago, and like everyone was like, this is not going to happen. Like Baker wasn't even like there. And, so sometimes they can even get like the first pick wrong. But yeah, it definitely provides like some entertainment value. And like, and that gets to us talking about like the NFL media. So like you dealt with, obviously like college football media, then NFL media. So like kind of like, what is your overall view on the media? Is it like person by person? It varies case by case. Are like they just like this entity that just like supplies this demand for this content, or satisfies that demand for the content, and do you think like it can improve in any way from a player's perspective?
No, I respect the media. Like I said, as a sports fan, I love what the media. I'm always wanting to know what the media has to say. Like let's be real, they literally do get the best information, or as close as it's going to get besides the real thing, And so, I respect him, and I think it's unique. I'm used to meeting new people every day, and building relationships, and, someone has the time that they want to interview me and, find out something about me or, my teammates, like, I think that's usually a pretty good thing. So I don't have a problem with it. And then, there's always some, cases where people get bad relationships with players, or, one guy's opinions might be a little more annoying,
Sure.
But at the end of the day, it's like, I have a hard time, not being rude to anybody, but if you haven't been in my shoes, or you don't know like what I do, practice and practice and stuff, like I don't take it too personal. Like if you have an opinion about me, it's one of those things. Like it'll be listened to, and I'll respect you, you respect me. But at the end of the day, like if I gave you opinion about your writing, at the end of the day, it really wouldn't bother you, because I don't know what I'm talking about, because I don't do it for a living. And so I but it's just a respect thing to me.
Yeah, because again, you're just like, I'm here, you're there. You do your thing, I'm going to do my thing. And like, again, we can have conversations about it and respectfully. But at the end of the day, there's a reason why I'm doing what I'm doing and you're doing what you're doing.
Exactly. And it's like, let's just both respect each other, and then, civil. And then if it's a good match, and you guys, it's all of that. Yeah. Agreed.
So the Packers did not bring in another tight end via free agency. They obviously brought back Mercedes Lewis. And my question to you is, and this might be like a super quick answer, but so being that you are one of the few tight ends that are on the roster, and obviously, the Packers spent a good amount of draft capital in you drafting in the 3rd round, does this put like any more or additional pressure on you to be like the future at that position? Obviously, Jimmy is gone. Or is it kind of just like business as usual? I'm going to go out and be the best I can possibly be.
I just think it's a really good opportunity, put in a very good situation with a very good offense, very good quarterback. So I literally look at it as just a great opportunity, control what you can control and then, let the rest fall in place.
Yeah. And it's interesting because like, I feel like, the thing that comes up all the time, like you look at our tight end room last year, right? You looked at guys like Mercedes Lewis, who can absolutely make clutch, receiving plays, but he's like on another planet, like when it comes to blocking. Like he's a fantastic blocker. And then you have Jimmy, who was brought in for the Packers, not necessarily for his blocking acumen, but more for his being a receiving threat, a red zone threat, etc. And I'm curious, to kind of get your take on it, because you came out of college and, when asked of like, which part of your game do you want to see improvement, receiving or blocking, you were like, it's obvious, it's blocking. And the reps that you got last year, you had a lot of opportunities to block, right? So whether it was playing fullback or whether it was like getting those one-on-one blocks. And I think I'm curious on like, how do you feel about like the Packers' decision to utilize you more as a blocker, and become more of like a holistic player rather than like immediately, put your receiving skills, like and excel that and focus on that?
It was all about trust from day one, that's in anything. Like you gotta be able to trust someone before you can, let them do it. And passing is a vital part in our offense. And so, Aaron has to have the absolute most trust. And, blocking, I'm not going to say it's easier to learn, but there's a lot more, I feel like there's a lot more details in the route running, especially with 12 than there is, blocking. So I proved that was just the one way. That was my first opportunity, to prove myself. And so I took it and just ran with it. That's the way I saw myself of, because I knew eventually, the passes were going to come.
Yeah.
Like that's part of it. But I was like, let me dominate this game that everybody's, doubting about. Just everything else will fall in place.
Yeah, and obviously, coming into this year, you're going to be more of a focal point on the offense. And, I have just read nothing but how you are just going to be like our main slot guy, in these past few days. It's just blown up that you're just going to be the number one guy there. I mean, like, listen, Randall Cobb, you're just going to take his spot and you're going to be playing primarily in the slot. Isn't that right?
Yeah, no, that's not true at all. It's just funny. I say not getting moved to slot. Someone literally tagged me on Instagram today. I was like, Coach LaFleur said Sternberger's moving to slot. And it was like, geez. But no, that's simply, the more we have a very big offense with a lot of opportunities, a lot of different positions, and the more the more opportunities you get. Like, so if we need a fullback, I can prove myself at fullback. And then, Jimmy moved around a lot this year. Mercedes lined up in the slot this year. Like, I wasn't being like I'm a slot receiver. It's more of like I'm gonna have opportunities, to move around in the slot.
Oh, hold on. That ruins all my notes. Okay. Sorry, I just have to pivot real quick then. So you're saying then, because since you're not just being primarily in the slot, that has no impact on the draft whatsoever, as drafting like a slot receiver. Cause that's, man, I heard a lot about that. So, oof, that's.
Yeah. No, still trying to be tight end one. Still trying to be tight end.
Well, I mean, like, that's what we were talking about too. Like, it's one of those things that obviously, given the times, there's more of a desperate demand for content more than ever. But like, I think it's like kind of like this simple idea that the more practice that you do, the more skilled you are, the more opportunities that you're going to get. And you mentioned it before. So that means that if you prove yourself as a blocker, you'll get opportunities as a blocker. If you prove yourself in the slot, you'll get more opportunities as a slot, and vice versa.
Exactly. That's all, because we have a very unique offense. You can line up in the slot as a 2 receiver, the 3 receiver. You can line up as a wing, as a tight end, as a fullback, the motion guy, the fly guy. And it's just all about how much you know and how much you can show that you can handle. So
yeah,
I just take that. I just look at it as, that's what a better way to, earn your quarterback's trust than, show him you can play multiple positions.
Yeah, and I mean, and making sure that 12 doesn't get hit probably, goes a long way with that trust too. If you're blocking for him and he doesn't take a sack or doesn't take a big hit, like he's gonna be like, okay, thank you for that, appreciate that. Can't hurt.
Exactly.
And so I'm pretty sure this is true, but I do want to verify it with you first. Is it true for like a hot second you played quarterback in high school?
Oh yeah.
Yes. Okay. Wonderful. Because that would have been a super awkward question that I would have had to skip if I got that wrong. So,
Yep.
I heard that like you kind of were moved around a little bit. Like you played defense a little bit, you played QB a little bit.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like the reason behind it, I was a 5'9", 5'8" quarterback my freshman year, and then I literally was 6'3" by the end of the school year. Like it was a crazy shift, and so like when I made this transition, I was still trying to play quarterback at first. I was in with the twos on a JV game, or no, it was a varsity game, but it was just the twos, and I was like running, got my shoulder separated, healed from it, but like I guess our right tackle was doing bad, so they moved our current tight end to right tackle, and then they moved me to they were like, hey, you want to try tight end? And yeah, the rest is kind of history.
Yeah. So like obviously it's a short period, but like I've heard you talk about you're not one of those guys who, I mean, you've talked about this on other podcasts, and I do not want to, go over it again. But like times where like you're open, like everyone's talking about like the wheel route that you're wide open. I don't care about that. What I'm talking about is like you're not the kind of player that's gonna be like, hey, Aaron, I was open, throw to me. Because again, you're just trying to do what you can for the team. You're trying to build that trust, etc. Do you think that like part of that like personality comes from, even for like a hot second, being in the shoes of like a QB or seeing other players, want to be like the focus or the spotlight, and it's more about the individual than the team, that you're like, no, that's not the route I'm going to go?
Yeah, that's like one thing I'm blessed to be a part of Green Bay for, because there's no hot shots on the team. It's all literally, care for one another, put the team first. And so, I haven't been exposed to any of that yet. Only being in the league 1 year. Everything I saw was, positive all the time. And, we had rough spots,
Sure.
Times were bad sometimes, but, at the end of the day, it was never no permanent negativity. It was always like one step forward. We got to just stay together.
Yeah, and that leads to what we talked about this like a little bit before. So you are part of like an elite group, and what I mean by that is like there are less than 1,700 people on this planet that do what you do, that play in the National Football League. And I'm always curious from like a player's perspective, does that, like when you walk into a locker room, is there kind of like that unspoken like bond / culture because you are one of so many men within that room, within that organization that, have the chance to play at this level? Or at the same time, or maybe it's a little bit of both, can it kind of be like isolating a little bit, like what you were mentioning before, talking about that like analysts haven't been in my shoes, they don't know, exactly what I'm going through?
No, I think it's definitely more of like a common ground thing. Is like, okay, like it's somewhat, everybody's going to somewhat be relatable in a way, but there's still their differences of like, because even those guys, some guys who make it in the league, they don't work hard, or that you kind of like, how did you even get here in a certain way? But and so like there's still those differences, but for the most part, it's like it's it's common ground. We're all here, we're all at the same level. Like we're all here now. It's not about where we're from or what school we went to. Like we're all at the same level now. So like we got to win.
Yeah, and I feel like that's easy to like at least create a culture in which, like you're talking about, there's no I, right? Like there's not somebody who's like, I need to get this ball, I need to be like, it's all about me. So I feel like that definitely helps, create that common ground and at least maintain it. You can have negative spots, but it definitely helps in some way.
Yeah, 100%.
So you've been asked a million times about oh, did you learn blocking from Mercedes Lewis? And please don't answer that question anymore. But one of the other things, please don't answer that question anymore, but we're done with that. But one of the things that you had mentioned about like LaFleur talking about like, oh, like, work on your release, what have you. And so then other people are like, oh, we have a great release guy on the team. We have Devontae Adams. And my question is not, geared towards individual players. My question is more, okay, you see that a guy is really good at blocking. You see that a guy is really good at getting a quick release. How does that work? And what I mean by that is like, do you go up to them and are like, hey, can you teach me this? Or is it kind of like, I'm just going to learn by watching? Or is it, I'm not going to approach you at all and I'm going to earn their respect and then maybe they'll come to me?
I mean, Mercedes is different because, he's very, I wouldn't say laid back, but he's so calm and cool, collected, so it's like, you kind of got to like earn his trust. Not before he'll give you advice, but you just got to show that you're really in this thing. Like he's not going to waste his breath on me. Like if I'm, bullshit. And so it's like, I had to prove myself. But it usually goes about, if you care enough, like you're going to ask questions, just like in anything. Like in school, if you don't know something, you're going to ask your teacher, for the answer. Like, and I was like, why the hell would I not ask Jimmy Mercedes 100 questions every day? Like, I didn't even care if I was being annoying. Like, granted, like. Mercedes is probably one of the scariest people, but he's like the nicest person. He's just so intimidating. Like literally, so it's like I was still out asking him questions every day. Like, so I was like, they literally have the answers to the test.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like there has to be like, yes, like if you're asking like 100 questions a day, I'll say this as like a teacher, is it eventually going to get annoying? Absolutely. You're going to be a pain in the ass. However, like it also does show that you're interested, right? Like, and that you're buying into this. And I feel like that also, that goes some way with it as well.
No, 100%.
So that being said, like just starting to wrap up so I don't keep you all day. You've talked about, your work ethic, whether it was here, other interviews. You talked about, the attitude that you have, like when it comes to like blocking and how you have to have a certain like mindset for it, or like playing as an underdog or with a chip on your shoulder. If you had to like summarize, what kind of impact do you want to make on the Green Bay Packers?
I want to go down as someone who fans enjoy to watch because, not only what he did on the field, but, what he did off the field, like someone that their kids could look up to, they want to bring their families around and, someone who just really, cares about what he's doing and, at the end of the day knows that football isn't everything and, there's a real life after football and, everyone matters. And, I really believe that, treat everybody how you want to be treated and then, good things will happen.
Yeah. And I think like that has to be like one of the best ways to possibly look at football in that like there will be a time, it's not hopefully not for a very long time, that this is going to be done, right? In which like your career eventually, hopefully it'll be, with a resounding success that it'll eventually be done. And what we'll have after that is like those relationships that you made with players, with fans, with organizations, with cities and things like that. And that's the kind of stuff that like transcends football.
I mean, 100%, because, just like anything, if you oversess or, overemphasize about something for so long, like you're gonna go crazy. So like this whole time I've been trying to, not prepare myself, but like you can't control injuries. You can't control like viruses going around. Like you know what I'm saying? So It's like you can only put so much into this. You got to put your all into it at the same time. But it's like it can all be taken away from you. So you just really have to respect the game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's I think that's what makes it. Whether it's any sport or like even like any profession. There'll be a day where it's done, and hopefully you can just look back and be like, this was, some of the best times of my life. And now, I'm prepared to have a new chapter after football. And I think it seems like, what you're talking about, like you've kind of been preparing for that for a while. And, I think you'll not only have a very successful career in Green Bay, but also, afterwards for whatever you decide to endeavor in. and that brings me to like the last point. So you have a pretty remarkable story when it comes to your childhood and dealing with illness. And you one of your best friends growing up, Alfonso, tragically passed away from cancer. And I know that you mentioned that you were interested in starting a charity, and one of the people that obviously you knew very closely was Jimbo Fisher, who had his own charity. Can you kind of like speak and kind of just like tell fans kind of like where you hope to eventually, or what you hope to eventually create, outside of football that, can make a positive impact on the community and those suffering with illnesses?
Yeah, so Jimbo's son was diagnosed with this horrible bone disease that was non-curable. It had like a 7% chance of surviving, and just because there's no funds for it, there was no research being done for it. It just wasn't a priority. And this is when Jimbo, I think he either just got the job at LSU or it was early in his career. I remember, so don't fact check me on that. But he's literally doing this on the side and tells the doctor like, "Hey, I'm gonna start a foundation. I'm gonna raise money for it." And I guess she kind of laughed it off, like, "Who the hell are you? How much is it going to cost?" And
Yeah.
he was kind of like, "Yeah." He's like, "Do you know who the hell I am?" One of those. He didn't say that, but he was joking like he did. And it was just, so he's like, at the end of the day, football. I love football to death, and Jimbo's crazy. I love him to death, but he's crazy, crazy. But and he's like the most dedicated person to football I've ever seen. And if he's telling me that I need to have a downtime and a life outside of it, it's like, you have to, because he does this whole other thing for his son. And I think now it's at a 97% cure rate ever since he started the foundation. And, he doesn't force it upon any people, but he offers it to his team. Every year he offers his team, an opportunity that they can give blood to find out they're a match for bone marrow, and it's for kids who are battling this bone disease. And he'll have players who are matched, and they agree, and it's just a special thing. And that really just inspired me to. I shared my story with him about Alfonso and the whole foundation. They were open arms to the idea of me starting something, and I just. No kid should have to go through cancer. No kid should have to go before their parents, and watching Alfonso, a 12-year-old kid, talk to me about how it's going to be okay and talking about death, it really just, it really inspired me to, just be there for them, because, no kid should have to go through something like this alone. And so I found out about St. Jude's, how, they donate to family, they pay for the families who can't afford medical bills. And, that was really that's what made me like, okay, I need to have a foundation for this. I need to start something, because there's more families like this out there that, you can help make a bigger impact on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, we very much look forward. I mean, we do on Packast, we give to charities a good amount. We try to give back to the community. And, definitely, as I mentioned to you before, hit me up whenever that gets created. And we would absolutely love to raise some money for that cause. And for this episode, whatever we wind up making on ad revenue, I'm happy to donate it to Jimbo Fisher's cause, because that just sounds like an awesome, and it's working. It's like a great cause, and it's working. To go from those kind of percentages is just insane.
Yes, so he's very, very thankful for that. So thank you.
All right, man. I greatly, greatly appreciate you taking the time, coming on the show, and talking about you and giving people a chance to know you better. And so with that being said, obviously, we're not in the midst of football season right now. However, you do plenty of things outside of football. So please tell me and tell the people where they can find everything Jace Sternberger to get to know you even better.
Twitter and Instagram is the same. It's _Jace Stern. And then my Twitch is Jace Stern 87.
Awesome. And are you like relatively active on Twitch? Yeah, right?
I'm getting pretty active on Twitch.
Excellent. I mean, at this point, where else are we going, right? Like we got
Exactly.
at this point. But Jace, thank you so much for coming on, man. I really, really appreciate it. I wish you and your family well. Stay safe, stay healthy during this time, and we all really look forward to seeing what you can do on the field this season.
Thank you.
So go check out Jace Sternberger, everybody. Go check him out on Twitch. He's pretty damn active, and go follow him on the social medias and show him some love, and give him a big thank you for coming on this show. Also, in addition, so I have put down a link to the Kids First Fund, which is Jimbo Fisher's charity. I will be donating all the ad revenue from that, so feel free to share this all around, just so I put more money into it. And it goes to a great cause, and I implore you, if you're able, to donate to that as well. And when Jace eventually creates his foundation, we'll definitely be supporting that as well. But you can always find me at TomGrossiComedy.com or at TomGrossiComedy. All social media see down below. Check out Packast on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play Music, Spotify, and of course YouTube. And a big shout out and thank you to all the Patreon members who are at patreon.com/TomGrossiComedy. That's the easiest way to support me. It really, really helps out, allows me to do this. So big thank you to Jace Sternberger. A big thank you to you. I'm Tom Grossi. And as always, go Pack Go.